All join palms. And repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Dharma.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
I take refuge in the Sangha.
Keeping the palms joined. Palms down. All right, good morning, everybody. Nice to see you all here. Thanks for showing up. One of my favorite things is the way people enter this space. I have a lot of favorite things over the last 18 years, but that's one of my favorite. How do people enter this space?
I go to the left.
Yes, you do.
Yeah,
Thank
because
you
I
for
mean,
that.
that's what I was taught, or somebody told me that once, that when you enter a Buddhist temple, you go to the left rather than straight down.
Interesting.
I don't know why.
Yes.
I mean, you might know why, but
It doesn't even matter why, but
yeah,
what
yeah,
I love,
I always wonder why. That's what I'm gonna say.
you're going to have to go back to whoever told you that and
I
ask.
guess I'll have to.
But my favorite part of that is that somebody just told you and you did what?
Automatically did it
And for how long now?
since July.
Oh, okay. Well, still, since July. Somebody probably told you to do something this morning and you ignored them, or yesterday and you ignored
No,
them.
Paul, I probably did.
Yes, I already know she did, right? And
Excuse me.
funny how strangers tell us things at a Buddhist place and we're like, yes, I'm going to do that every time.
Yeah.
But that's not even where I was going with this.
Sorry.
No, you're good. What else when we enter the space? What else is going on? Take your shoes off. Yes, so technical you all are.
And just put down what's going on out there.
Well, yes and no. You can't shut down what's going on out there. Say again?
Not all of it. No.
You can't shut down any of it.
No,
But what happens to you when you enter the space?
a feeling more peace and serenity.
Okay. Which has nothing to do with anything that's going on out there. I just want to point that out. Also not where I'm going with this, but what else happens? These are all great, by the way. I mean, my idea might not even come up, you know. What else?
People were quiet.
People are quiet, right? Which ties into the feeling of being peaceful and walking to the left and taking the shoes off and all those other things, right? But when we're quiet, then we actually get to do what? Listen, and what else? Focus, process. Say again? Smile, yeah. Just be aware. Just be aware of the space that you're entering. Now, how many of you do that everywhere else you go? Do you walk in and get quiet and become aware? Do you kind of pay attention to your surroundings? Do you settle in? Do you just embrace being there? I don't even need to ask the question of do you feel peaceful when you enter, right? Hopefully you don't enter to the left everywhere you go. That might cause problems, right? But the reality is we just get quiet. And that is the start of so many things on any sort of spiritual journey or path. Because so many of the places we go to, we're not quiet at all. Even in our mind. Definitely not in the words. We enter a space often very aggressively, very kind of agenda-driven, very something that we're trying to accomplish or a task we're trying to finish or start. There's a million things. But very rarely do we enter spaces and we just allow ourselves to kind of be present. and get quiet. And so I bring that up to introduce the idea of what if you actually did that more often at places? Now, if you're at work and you got a meeting, I don't recommend doing that for 2 hours. It's probably not going to fly so well with whoever you're working with. But the first 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, whatever it is, depending upon the situation. Next time when you all leave here and you go to wherever you're going, right, whatever means of transportation or wherever you end up, see what happens if you just kind of enter the space quietly and actually just pause and reflect and look around and let everything that's kind of there sink in and settle in. Maybe it's heavy, maybe it's beautiful, maybe it's calm, maybe it's chaos, who knows? It'll be all over the board depending upon where you are and what you're doing. But take a few moments to just kind of pause and reflect on, where am I? Because this idea of being present isn't just like, oh, I'm here now, and then I'm here now, and then I'm here now. It's actually to pay attention to where you are, not to ignore or be oblivious or pretend the past didn't happen or the future's not coming. Right? Being present and being here now doesn't mean you're avoiding the past and the future. To me, it means you're actually paying attention to what's going on in this moment. And, especially as a Zen practitioner, that's what the entire practice is about, is just being present with each moment as if it's never occurred before. Anyone been in an argument with anyone recently? Okay? And then the argument's done, let's say. 5 minutes later, an hour later, the next day, you see them again. What are you often ready to jump back into? The argument, because you're carrying that with you still. But if you show up with the person you were just arguing with, or the person you're angry at, or whatever it might be, as if you've never approached them before, then maybe some of that anger and frustration, animosity, hatred, disappointment, whatever it might be, fear, anxiety, sadness, depression, worry, have I covered all of them yet, right? Have I covered everything your psychologist talked to you about, right? That is what we're working on, is just being present and showing up to a place as if we've never been there before and paying attention. And when you do that, you begin to listen to the most important thing at the start of this practice, which is what? Your mind. And then you get to feel your heart and become aware of, oh, here I am. Now what? So just try that. Like I said, it can be 3 seconds. It doesn't have to be a long practice. Depends on where you are and what your setting is like. But, all right, so with that, we're going to start with meditation practice. For those who are joining virtually, glad you're here. Thanks for showing up. A couple things to tell you all before we begin. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're not going to float away. You're not going to have any mystical, magical experiences. The mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice, meaning don't ask yourself, is this working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit, we're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds inside, sounds outside. This is life. Life is filled with chaos. And this practice is learning to get quiet and still within all of the chaos. Posture, you just want to be comfortable. If you are in a cushion, often it helps slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten. If you're on a bench or chair, however you're seated, also just trying to sit comfortably, relaxing the shoulders if you can. Hands are on the knees or lap, whatever works for you. If you need to move during meditation, simply move. Movement doesn't make you a bad meditator, it just means you need to move. Most important with this practice, do not expect anything. We're just going to sit and breathe. I'll guide us as we begin, and we'll settle into a little bit of silence. Starting with your eyes closed if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth is open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. eventually, settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. Start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. Simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it. Release that thought. Return attention, focus to the breath. Breathing in. Follow breath in. Breathing out. Follow breath out. Letting go of expectations. Letting go of judgments from your practice. Just sitting. Breathing. the body still, rested. And the speech quiet, aware of all sounds. And the mind learning to settle. Know what it's like to just sit and breathe. Knowing with each breath, there's nothing else to do. Nowhere else to go. And no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is. Sitting, breathing. And once again, taking 3 deep breaths, slowly. As you slowly open the eyes, slowly beginning to move. And most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you'd prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with in this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. Not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It has everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awaken. He was a human being, no different than any one of us. He began to understand why he suffered. Why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means very simply for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is simply learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond every other 20-minute period of your day. And so all we're working on is closing the gap to where the way you feel now is closer to how you feel always. Just as driven, motivated, productive, successful, whatever that means to you in your respective lives. But with a mind that's steady, clear, focused, distracted by nothing, disturbed by no one. It's not an easy practice. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape as often people think it is. It is direct perception into the present moment. And the present moment is filled with conflict, chaos, difficulties, challenges, life going other than how you want it to go. This practice is learning to embrace all of that with kindness and compassion, not hatred and anger. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice is free. It's just sitting, breathing, becoming aware of what you think, what you say, and what you do in every moment. And that's it. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything and everyone around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. And then you can create change. But coming from a place of kindness and compassion, not from a place of hatred and anger. Big difference. So for me, I'll pause there. Always prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything you're sitting with. For those who are joining virtually, welcome. Again, glad you're here. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat box. I'll do my best to respond. And we'll open up to questions. Yeah.
Could you elaborate just a little bit more on the dependent origination?
Yeah. So, as I always say, after every meditation, pratitya samupata, dependent origination, the causal relationship of all phenomena. To put that, and I say that the Buddha's enlightenment was based on the deep realization, understanding of dependent origination. To put it into simple practice terms, do you know who Emanuel Swedenborg is? No. I know you do. Put your hand down. Right. Without him, who lived 200 and something years ago, you would not be sitting here right now. You ever thought about thanking him? How about now? Maybe, right? I mean, he died 200 something years ago, so it's going to be tough, but you could still send gratitude and appreciation to Emanuel Swedenborg, because without him, you wouldn't be sitting here right now. None of us would be sitting here right now. Because in the 1700s, he became known for his work in what became the Swedenborgian community, Christian mystics. And then in the 1900s, their local chapter in San Diego, 27 specifically, built this place you're sitting in. Those people literally laid the wood floor that you're sitting on right now, 97 years ago. And because of that, we all have a place to sit. So now, often people talk about gratitude, we relate it to, like if I said to you, hey, you're only here because your mom, that would kind of make more sense, right? But it's so much greater than that. There are endless conditions, endless causes and conditions in Buddhism. You hear about causes and conditions that happened, that had to occur. Every wonderful moment in your life and every traumatic moment in your life led you to be sitting here right now. So all of those experiences are equally responsible for you sitting here, no different than Emanuel Swedenborg. If every single one of those causes and conditions did not occur, you'd be somewhere else right now, or not here at all. This is, to me, what putting dependent origination into practice actually means, because it creates conditions where, again, for me as a practitioner, I don't have a choice but to be grateful for every experience that has happened. I can label them as good and bad and right and wrong and, all those labels I want to give them. But every single one of those moments created this condition. And if any one of those changes, our lives are drastically different. Make sense so far? Yeah. So it really is, for me, ultimately coming down to gratitude. Well, the way for me as a practitioner, bring dependent origination into my life is to have gratitude for everything and everyone in all time, in all space, in all directions. Whether I know them or not, whether I like them or not, whether I agree with them or not, whether I want it to happen or not. Here I am, with this opportunity to make a difference in my life and the lives of those around me. I mean, what more do we actually need? You are alive, you are breathing. Most likely everybody here had food to eat. Probably a roof over your head, some clothes to put on. Do you need much more? So, gratitude. Yeah. What else?
How do you deal with a negative attitude?
How do I deal with what? Say that last part?
A negative attitude.
The negative attitude.
Like somebody came to you and you picked up a negative feeling for them. What do you do?
Yeah, so when the question is, how, in essence, how do we deal with negative attitudes? When people come to us with negative emotions, negative feelings, the very first thing for me, what I learned from this practice is, well, let me ask you this. Have you ever had a negative attitude?
Yes.
Remember that one time in 1982?
Many times.
Many times. And when you have a negative attitude, that means what about you? How are you feeling?
I feel bad.
You feel bad.
I shut down.
Yep.
I don't want to deal with anybody or anything.
Right. So you shut down, you have a negative attitude, you feel bad, you don't want to deal with anyone or anything. So when other people have negative attitudes, they have similar things going on. We don't know what it is in many cases. Even if we think we know, we really don't know. Because all we see is the surface of what people want to present to us. We don't know what their lives have been like, what trauma they faced, what pain they've experienced. We just see how it impacts us. So when people have a negative attitude, the very first practice that I've learned through Buddhism is to have compassion. Because if they have a negative attitude, they're probably suffering. If they're just being mean and angry to people and a lot of, hatred, they're suffering. Now, it doesn't mean what they're doing is right or okay, or that we should approve of it mentally and emotionally. But your question is, how do we deal with people who have a negative attitude? The answer is, you have compassion for their suffering, because that is the only reason that that's coming out. And one could argue, well, they're just mean. Well, okay, but they didn't come into this world mean. Right? They were taught to be mean. They were conditioned to be mean. They went through experiences to be mean. And the next amount of years later, we just throw judgment at them and say they're just mean. We have no idea what their life has been like. You know who was mean for probably 30 years of his life? This guy. So, I've yet to meet people who are more mean and angry than myself. And I've been doing this work a long time, and I spent, 20 years volunteering in prisons and been around a lot of communities that are filled with so much hatred and anger and rage and violence. So, you practice compassion. That's how you get to understand. Yeah.
Is there a good way to separate that negativity from internalizing?
Yeah. So the question is, for those virtually maybe didn't hear it, is there a good way to separate the negativity from internalizing it, right? And, the first thing that pops to mind is, and this is not, I'll just say this. Whatever I say to you now, and I have no idea what I'm about to say because I never do, but whatever I say, I'll start by saying this shit ain't going to be easy, right? But let me tell you, the first thing I was taught, I was 20, and I was a college student working in group homes, counseling adolescent females who've been physically, sexually, emotionally abused, been through tremendous trauma. And I'll never forget when I showed up a couple weeks in and the kind of the psychiatrist, the head person there, looking back on it, I'm convinced she was what I would call a closet Buddhist, but at that time in a certain space, she wasn't coming out of the world and saying she was Buddhist, but she was definitely Buddhist. But what she said to me was, Jeff, when you show up to work with these kids, bring all your heart, all your attention, be present with them, love them, and the moment you walk out the door, leave them here. Meaning that I couldn't carry, when you work with people who are suffering and in a lot of pain and really negative or whatever the situation is, it's hard to not carry that with you. But for me over the years, what I learned from that, and then I saw it come up in other places, is and I understand this is your question, how do I do it? But let me start here. I had to get to a place where I didn't carry all of that with me because it was destroying me. If you have this heart that wants to help people, and you run around and you turn them into tiny little people and put them in your heart and pocket and carry them around all day long, it'll destroy you. And so the practice of non-attachment, right? Again, these are the not easy things. To say non-attachment is well, how do I do that? Understand that there's only so much we can do. And when people have a negative attitude, if they're having pain, if they're suffering, we can see it. And something I say in my head, literally, and I quote, that's their shit, not mine. I don't have to pick up their drama, their anger, their misery, their, all my judgments that would go into judging how they are. Like, that's their mess. I've got my own. So it's really hard to put in words, but I really do, for lack of better words, I have this wall. I mean, literally, I have this wall that I'm able to kind of like in a limo, like the thing goes up and it goes down. Come up with a million examples, but you get it. And it goes up and it goes down, and it goes down when it needs to go down, and then when it goes up, and it's like, now I'm back to me. So I think it's the practice of non-attachment that says, look, I'm going to care for others or not. I mean, it doesn't have to be in a caring situation. It could be just in a situation of people with all their negativity. But I'm not going to internalize that. It's not worth it. But what happens is, and this is all where the practice comes in, when we view or feel people's negativity, that means they're doing or saying something that we don't what? We don't like. We don't agree with. So we're like, they're negative. They don't think they're being negative very often, depending upon the situation. Like I always joke and say there's a whole room of people right now, somewhere else, at some meditation, some therapy lesson, or whatever it might be, because of you all. They're all trying to deal with the negativity that you brought into their lives. And you all think you're the positive ones because you're in like the Buddhist place. You're like, oh, I'm so positive and happy, I do meditation, So other people's negativity isn't necessarily negative to them. It's just their views. We see it as negative. So there's a lot going on there, but put up the wall, their mess, the practice of non-attachment. The last piece I was going to say was that I think that's where self-compassion comes in also, and obviously patience. But to say, look, I need to recognize if I'm in a situation that there is a lot of negativity. We can't always remove ourselves from it. Sometimes we can, but to make sure we kind of fill our cup and take care of ourselves also, so other people don't drain us so much, or other situations don't drain us so much. I don't know if that helps, but just some thoughts. Yeah.
How do you do that without being judgmental though? Because I feel like I go to those situations with like a preconceived idea, and then that person fills out my idea of like who and then I'm just either thinking I'm better than them for not engaging in their negative. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I spin out and.
Yeah. Yes. So the question for those who didn't hear it, in essence, is how do we do all that without being judgmental? So there's a word that I hear a lot around Buddhist kind of teachings, because this idea of like embracing life as it, all these kind of cliche things like be here now, and just like deal with the present moment and don't judge people. We have to judge people, but the word I like is discernment, as opposed to judging. The reason that discernment makes sense to me is that, if somebody came up to me and was trying to attack me, I have to discern, is it healthy, smart, wise for me to stay there? Or is it healthy, smart, wise to run away or get away, right? That's a discernment. That's also, I am judging that situation. But what I'm not judging, the practice is what I'm not judging is them. I don't know why they're attacking me. I don't know anything about them. But like you said, and you gave a great example of, okay, you've already created your box. The problem is that you have a box that you have created, for those who didn't hear it, that you immediately put people into that box and you've judged them before anything has even occurred. Again, it's similar to the last response, but like they're suffering. They came into this world the same way we did, as babies screaming, who needed love, they needed attention, they needed to be fed, they needed their diaper changed, and they were shaped and molded just like all of us were. We were shaped and molded however we were shaped, as was everybody else. So it's very easy, for me, this helps with not kind of shattering the box because, in a sense, like, the box isn't right. Like, you have a box that you've created, kind of a label, right? And you've identified X amount of people that fit, but you don't even know those people. You're basing it on one thing. You don't know anything about them, but somehow they fit into your box of the people that I wish you could see these facial expressions, so it's the shattering the box that says, I don't know people's pain and suffering. I don't know where they come from. I don't know how they were raised. I don't know what they were taught. So you don't create the box. You discern, is it safe and healthy for me or not? Do I feel it's safe and healthy for others? And the reason I bring up that point is very often, especially if you're new to Buddhism, you might have this idea, or one might have this idea that we're just supposed to let everything happen and be passive and just allow people to kill each other. No. There's nothing in Buddhist teachings that say that, right? The practice of compassion for self and others is to always be safe. Create some boundaries that keep you safe and healthy. It's not ignoring those things. If you're being abused physically, mentally, emotionally, in any way, then remove yourself from the situation, if possible. There's no Buddhist teaching that says just stay there and be one with everything. That's not what the Buddha was teaching. Right? I mean, there are many examples in his life. But when people came and tried to kill the Buddha, which they did, his cousin Devadatta tried to kill him, he forgave him and he taught him how to do well. So, I know, we're not quite there yet. So close. One more Saturday, we'll have it figured out. So, what else? Yeah.
So how do you practice non-attachment to your child? And you know how he was raised.
Go sit over there. No, I mean this.
No, and then...
It's not this one, it's the other one. Why, you're not attached to this one? Try this.
No.
Go sit over there.
But I'm not...
How do you feel right now?
Okay.
Okay, all the way over there.
But I'm not even talking about that one.
You don't love this one? What's going on?
I do, but I'm not. So.
When you're in therapy someday, we will all... You can't even look this way, right? So continue.
So how do you practice non-attachment with your child that you know is suffering, but you know how that child was raised because I raised him.
Yeah. It's not your fault.
I know.
No, you don't know. You just said, I know, like, so quickly. Because you didn't want to hear that. Because you don't know that. Because you don't believe it. Let's try this again. It's not your fault that he is suffering.
And he said,
She's good. He said what? Go ahead.
it makes me laugh because he said, you are suffering to me.
You are.
Yeah, I know.
He's right. I know him. He's a smart kid. He's what, 17 by now?
I was 18.
Oh, 18. He stopped listening to you a long time ago.
Probably never.
Never. Probably never. Again, I can't talk about what it's like to be a parent. I don't know. Don't have children. I know what it's like to be a child who never listened to his mother. Ever. So, one, there's hope for him, right? Which is not your question. But two, it's not your fault. You raised him with all the love and kindness and compassion in the world that you could. You poured your heart into him, and maybe he ignored it. Maybe he didn't listen to you. Maybe he doesn't care. He's on his own journey. Non-attachment, for those who've never heard the teaching of non-attachment, is not, you can go back if you want, even though it's much more fun to have you there. Right? Non-attachment is not love. I just want to remind you of that.
No, I'm starting to get that.
Love is non-attachment. Love is understanding. Love is appreciation. Love is respect. Again, when he's 2, you're responsible for a lot more. And I understand that as a mother, 17, 18-year-old, and for any mother or parent in here, you're always going to feel that responsibility, I would imagine. But he's going to make his own choices. He has been for a very long time. And you did the best you could. And some things you did, I'm sure, were flawless and perfect and wonderful. And maybe you made 1 or 2 decisions that weren't the best decisions along the way. Pretty sure that's what it means to be a parent. At the end of the day, does he know you love him?
Yeah.
Yes. Just because he ignores you doesn't mean he doesn't think you don't love him. Just because he doesn't listen to you doesn't mean that he doesn't know that you love him. He doesn't listen to you because he's a 17-year-old kid. So non-attachment is love. Love is non-attachment. Every person, whether it's a child, whether it's a parent, whether it's a partner, whoever it might be, is on their own journey. And this is what non-attachment really gets into, is to understanding that you have given him as much love and tools as you could. And he is on his own journey, as we all are. And we make our own choices. And when we make choices that are wonderful, we're proud of them. And when we make if he makes choices that are wonderful, you're proud of him. If he makes choices that are terrible, he still made a choice. Be proud of him and hope he doesn't choose choices that harm himself or others. But you're going to love him regardless, no matter what he does. That's all you can do. She went like this. So, yeah, don't tell him that. I'm just going to say the same thing again. Non-attachment is love. Every single person in this room, I'm guessing, struggles with attachment. Because we want people to be and act and do certain things. And we all think our view is what? Right. We all think our views are right. And anybody who disagrees with us is wrong. Why? Because we're convinced. Why? Because we've told ourselves that our whole lives. Why? Because we have somebody else who supports my view. And then we think everybody else is wrong. Well, they all think you are wrong. And like I said, they're complaining about you right now. So, this is non-attachment. Everybody's on their own journey. Let's try not to harm people. And when people do harm people, they don't need more hatred and anger. They need more love and compassion so they can stop harming people. It's real simple. It's not easy to do because we've never learned this. But, yeah. What else? The last thing I'll say about non-attachment, I don't think I said this, very often, especially if you're hearing that word for the first time, very often non-attachment can sound like you don't care. Like years ago, there was a class that came here from another religious school, and they were going to other religious practice places, so I was with about 20 of them, and they were in high school. And the girl asked about, that she learned in her school that Buddhists can't love their mother because they practice non-attachment. And I said, well, I'm glad you're asking that question so I can educate you on what non-attachment in Buddhism actually means. And I told that story for years. Oh, and I haven't told this part yet. I told that story for probably 3, 4, 5 years. And then about 3 months ago, that girl came back and reminded me that she was that person. And I said, I've been telling your story for like 5 years. She has since broadened her views. Other questions? But there's an example to many of the questions. Like this person literally thought, because of what she was taught, that Buddhists can't love their mother. So, yeah.
Someone recently said to me that they read that pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional, and that felt paradoxical, and they weren't sure how to resolve that in a Buddhistic fashion.
Sure.
What is the Buddhist philosophy? And I wasn't quite sure how to answer that. I'd love to hear you talk about it.
Yeah. So the question was, someone told you or read or came across the expression, which you hear thrown around a lot in Buddhist circles as well, but that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I mean, first and foremost, you look at like core fundamental Buddhist teachings, and that would completely negate that statement, because the very first thing the Buddha taught is that life is filled with suffering. I'm going to expand on this a little bit, so give me a minute. But the first thing, the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha said is life is filled with suffering. Right? Forget pain, it's just suffering. It doesn't mean all life sucks, but that we're going to experience a lot of suffering in our lives. The second thing he said is, what's the cause? 3 poisons: greed, anger, ignorance. So we practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom to overcome greed, anger, and ignorance. The third is the ending of suffering, the third noble truth. And that's liberation, nirvana, freedom from suffering, or as I say, just kind of going through your day and being peaceful and happy. And the fourth is the Eightfold Path. And that's 8 steps: having correct views. And I know the word correct is there. You got to use language somehow. Views, thought, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, and concentration. All that's on Google for free. You can read it all. You're good to go. But that was the first thing he taught. All of the Buddhist teachings come from those 4 noble truths. The word dukkha is what he said. Life is filled with dukkha. Dukkha in Buddhism is often in English translated as suffering. Terrible translation of the word. Because suffering sounds real heavy and extreme. Discomfort, angst, dissatisfaction. You ever had your latte or a sandwich made the wrong way? Yeah, that's dukkha. Your life's probably not going to end. But when the Buddha said life is filled with dukkha, he was right. You know how much dukkha you're going to experience today? A lot. You know, your sandwich isn't right. You know, you don't like the way your hair looks, or, you know, you have a red light longer than you want it to be, whatever. You're going to experience a lot of discomfort and angst throughout today. So the Buddha said life is filled with all of that. So the first thing he says is life is filled with suffering. Now back to your thing about pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Usually when I hear that, and people expand on it, kind of the idea is that we're going to experience pain in our lives, physically, mentally, emotionally, but we can mentally or emotionally choose if we want to suffer from it. I don't love that expression, honestly, personally, because pain and suffering are inevitable. We're going to experience both of them. To me, the real challenge in question is when we experience pain and suffering, and this is a teaching in Buddhism called the second arrow. The question is how much pain, suffering, discomfort, angst, whatever word you want to use, are we going to experience? So, you ever been angry? Right? So someone did something to you, your interaction with them, and you got angry. Okay? The first arrow is your anger. Can we just be with that? Not usually. That anger stays with us for a day, an hour, 40 years, right? However long that anger is there. And then eventually that anger turns into sadness. Now we're sad because we're angry. Now we're angry and sad. And then we're like, well, now I'm angry and sad, so I'm just going to be depressed. So now we're angry, sad, and depressed. And now we're angry, sad, and depressed, so we're just like, well, screw it, life sucks, it's over. It was just one interaction that made you angry. But all the additional arrows, mentally and emotionally, destroyed us. So, pain is inevitable. Suffering is inevitable. The question is, how do you respond to it? But I get where most people are going with that expression of like how we respond to the pain it determines how much suffering we're going to experience from it. So on that level, yeah, I agree. Right? Things are going to happen in your life that you don't like, always, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And the question is how we respond to that is what we can control. And that's, I think, what they're meaning by the suffering is optional. Does that make sense? Yeah. Anything else before we close? Yeah.
A quick one. So, I was walking out of my house and there was a cockroach on the ground, and it looks like it got some poison. It was on its last leg. What is?
Hang on, stop. Are you a cockroach doctor? You literally just started a question with, and I'm going to close with this, and I love the question, and I'll get to your point, right? And I want to clear up something because I did this the other night. When I if you know, I'm a smart ass. I tease people. I push people. When I do this, it's never meant at the individual. It's actually meant at all of you because many of us are thinking the same way. So when someone is brave enough to ask a question like that and I say, wait, just stop, I'm literally talking to all of you, right? So don't try not to take things personally when I say things like whatever I say, like just stop, okay? So what you started your question with was you saw a cockroach and you just gave me like some medical description of what was going, like you said it ate poison and it was on its last leg. Now, how do you know that?
It was like spasming.
Maybe the cockroach is doing yoga. Right? Have you heard my snail story?
I have not.
Okay, I haven't told it in a while. Who here's heard my snail story? Actually, only less than half. Okay, so I'm going to close with this story. When I was a kid, growing up, and lots of anger, fights, hatred, violence, all kinds of stuff, destructive. Shattered and broke whatever I could for a long time. This wasn't like when I was 6. This is into my 16, 17, 18-year-old years. So you got nothing to worry about. I guarantee I was worse than he was. I used to love stepping on snails. And where my parents' house is, same house, still there today, as you walk up when it would rain or water would go on the grass, snails would come out and they'd end up on the sidewalk. When I was a kid, I would stomp on them. Right? So then, I'm fast forward to 2003, I'm 28 years old, I start going to my Buddhist stuff and I start trying to transform my life, from being an angry asshole to a compassionate person. And all of a sudden, maybe, I don't know how long in, a year in or something like that, I had this realization like, oh my God, I used to kill so many snails. And I started to feel really bad, like true sadness for all these snails that I killed. And so I went on this Save the Snail crusade, as I kind of called it over the years, where I then anytime I saw a snail, I would pick up the snail, I would move the snail. If it was on the sidewalk, I'd put it back on the grass. I was literally trying to save all the snails in the world, And I did that for, I don't know, maybe a year or two, trying to save all these snails. And then all of a sudden one day I started learning about something like non-attachment and wisdom started to kick in. And all of a sudden I was like, wait a minute, I think I'm saving the snails. I don't know what I'm doing to them, right? So maybe the snail that was on the sidewalk was headed where the snail wanted to go. Me, being the human, thinking I knew what was best, put the snail off the sidewalk into the grass because I thought they would be safer in the grass. And they're thinking shit, now I got to go back to where I was. And on their journey back to where they were going, boom, they get squashed. And here I am, moving the snail off the sidewalk onto the grass, walking away, feeling all proud of myself for saving the snail's life, when I honestly could have just brought it closer to its death. The other thing is, when snails are on sidewalks, believe me, I spent a lot of time thinking about this back then, you can see them. They're on the grass, you can't see them. So if they're on the sidewalk and people are paying attention, you might even have a chance of them being seen before they get stepped on. In the grass, there's no hope. You know what I ultimately did? When I see snails, I don't actually join palms anymore, but I have a little kind of prayer that I say, and I just wish them well. I don't touch them. They are on their own journey. And I got to stop messing with them because I don't know what's best for the snail. I might think I do, my human intellect, my, whatever, blah, 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 I think I know is best. I don't know. That's why I asked if you were a snail doctor, a snail nurse, because then maybe you would know exactly, or a cockroach, because then maybe you would know exactly what was best for them in that moment. But we don't know. I can't tell you what to do with them. I can only share my experience of what I've done. Yeah. So, report back. I'm going to close on that. We'll join palms. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all beings be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to Shirley Tam during her time of rebirth, and to Danny and their family and friends who suffer at this time. All right, a few quick announcements before you all head out. Thanks all for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma Bum. We opened up this temple 18 years ago to introduce Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead are not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers, we're not looking for students. We're just practitioners sharing our own interpretation of Buddhist practice with those who show up. So every night, different practices going on, different Buddhist traditions. Every Thursday, 4:30, we have a food redistribution program. I still think it's the best thing we do around here. We prepare gourmet vegetarian meals, also known as peanut butter and jelly, and we feed people who sleep on the sidewalk. So anytime you think your life sucks and you kind of lack gratitude for everything that's going on, go feed people sleeping on a sidewalk, and it tends to put things into perspective. And if it doesn't work for you, keep going back till it does. A couple things out of the ordinary. As we get to the end of the year, we'll have some different things. But this Wednesday night for the last probably 6 weeks, we've had a guest speaker series. So this Wednesday night, we'll have Makeda. I don't know if any of you know Makeda. Makeda Dredd, she is the founder, CEO, executive director of the World Beat Center in Balboa Park. She's one of the most dynamic, incredible women I've ever known in my entire life. She's just a living bodhisattva. So if you've never met Makeda, she also started when I was a kid, Reggae Makosa, 91X. She ran that. So if you ever listen to that, that's Makeda. And she was buddies with Bob Marley, so I don't know what else you need to know. But she'll be here Wednesday night at 7 o'clock. And the other thing is Thanksgiving. This will be our 15th annual food redistribution program. So it's like our normal Thursday, but we do it Thanksgiving morning, 10 o'clock. We'll have a ton of people, anywhere between 75 to 100 people. But it's a lot of people show up. The website has stuff if anybody wants to send supplies, peanut butter jelly. We're doing socks. We're doing ponchos. We're doing feminine hygiene products, and so it'll be a fun day, 10 to 1. We'll be here 10 to 11:30, and then we'll head downtown. You'll be done by 1, so if you have stuff the rest of the day, you'll have time for that. So if anyone wants to come Thanksgiving, we'll be here. So Buddha for you is downstairs if you need anything. Thank you all. When you go out, turn right, and we'll be good to go.